I was waiting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. It was my lone daughter, Angela. Her voice, it was weird, far away, like cold. "Mom," she said flatly. "We are departing for Europe tomorrow. I already sold your beach house and your car. We needed money. Bye." And that's it, she hung up. 45 years. 45 years of caring for her, giving up all for her. And with one call on the phone, she threw me away like trash. For an instant, the world whirled around me. But instead of toppling, I breathed deeply and smiled. For my sweet daughter had no clue that I still possessed a secret that she couldn't reach. My name is Antonia Brooks. I'm 71 years old. And until I received that phone call, I really thought I knew my daughter. 6 months prior, I had lost my husband, Robert, to a myocardial infarction, right in the middle of breakfast, just like on any other morning in our 45 years together. He had filled my coffee with cream, toasted the bread, kissed my forehead, and uttered his final words. "Good morning, my love." And then everything shifted. Angela began showing up more frequently, 3 times a week, assisting with groceries, the funeral, the bills. She even made me go to the doctor. "Mom, you need to take care of yourself now that you're on your own," she'd say with that sweet smile I believed came from love. But now I understand, it was one of convenience. That beach home she sold, it wasn't property. It was our haven. Robert and I purchased it when Angela was 15, after all the years of hard labor. We filled it with laughter every summer, birthdays, holidays, family dinners. Angela brought her boyfriends, later her husband, Edward. I'd cook, clean, wash the sheets, happy just to see her happy. I never imagined that one day, she'd look at that house and see only dollar signs. And the car, Robert's old Ford pickup. He treated it like his own child. Washed it every Sunday, changed the oil on schedule, parked it under the same tree, every single time. It still smelled of him, his cologne, his coffee. It was the last bit of him I had retained. And now she had sold it too. I sat there in that rigid green chair among hacking strangers, and for the first time since Robert died, I didn't weep. Something changed within me. An odd calm enveloped me, a strength I hadn't known in months. Because suddenly I recalled what Robert had mentioned to me only 3 days prior to his death. He had given me a little manila envelope and said, "Antonia, keep this in your dresser drawer. If something happens to me, open it when you're ready, not before." I had hidden it away and forgotten it, lost beneath grief, forms and funeral planning. But now, that recollection came flooding back like a spark in the dark. The nurse summoned my name, interrupting my thoughts. The doctor told me that I was healthy, that I just needed more rest and better nutrition. I agreed, acting as though I was listening. Yet my mind was already home, in that drawer. In returning, I rode the bus as apparently, my car no longer existed. But as I peered out the window at the city speeding by, individuals drowning in their own turmoil, I found myself smiling again. Angela believed she had taken everything from me. But what she didn't realize was that Robert, my smart, cautious Robert, was always a man who thought ahead. When I arrived home, I went directly to my room, opened the dresser drawer, and there it was, the manila envelope. Right where I'd put it. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. His writing was still so neat, so familiar. I sat on the edge of our old bed, where we'd shared a lifetime of mornings and secrets. The shadows crept across the walls in the evening, calm, not frightening anymore. I took a deep breath, and began to open the envelope, slowly, as if unwrapping a gift from the past. What I found in that envelope totally altered my world. There were legal documents, property deeds, bank certificates, and a letter, penned in Robert's own handwriting I knew so well. My fingers shook as I opened it. "My dearest Antonia," it started. "If you're reading this letter, I am no longer with you. Forgive me for keeping things from you, my love. I only wanted to spare you unnecessary worry." While reading, tears spread across the ink. Robert continued to disclose that he had been quietly investing our savings in properties and businesses over the years. We didn't merely own the beach house. We owned 6 other properties, including the very apartment building where Angela and Edward resided. He had also acquired stocks in 3 companies that were worth much more than I could have ever possibly dreamed. "You are a rich woman, my love," he wrote. "Always were. But now you are on paper too. I didn't tell you because I didn't want money to alter the way we are. And I didn't want Angela to know. I wanted her to love us because of who we are, not because of what we own. I sat there stunned, holding those documents, deeds to homes scattered around the city, a downtown condominium, a tiny coastside motel, and even the imposing 20-story apartment complex where my daughter resided. Robert had driven a bus for 40 years. Yet behind the scenes, he had been quietly doubling every dime we'd ever saved. And while I thought we were living modestly, he'd amassed an empire silently. That evening, I did not sleep. I paced around the house, running my fingers over every shard of outdated furniture that Angela used to refer to as outdated. I paused by the framed picture of her as a 5-year-old child, giggling on Robert's lap, her face radiant with happiness. Where was that little girl? At what point had she become someone who could auction off her mother's memories without so much as a twinge of guilt? The following morning, the phone rang. Angela's name lit up the screen. "Mom," she said quietly. "I just called to inform you that we've already transferred the money for the beach house and the truck. We deposited your share in your account. It's not much, but it'll pay you for a few months until you can find something smaller." I tried to keep my voice steady. "My share." "Yes, Mother. We left you 30%. That's right, isn't it? We have to use the rest for our investment in Europe. Edward's discovered a wonderful opportunity there." 30% of my own property. How generous. "I see," I said softly. "When are you going?" "This afternoon," she said. "Don't fret, Mother. When we return, we'll assist you in finding an apartment suitable for your needs." Suitable for my needs. As if she knew what I really needed. "Okay, Angela," I replied, smiling past the pain. "Safe trip." "Oh, Mom, I knew you'd get it. You've always been so understanding. We love you so much." And with that, she hung up. I stood there with the phone held to my ear and then, first time in months, I laughed. A loud, free laugh that echoed through the room. It was all just so ridiculous. My daughter had swiped from me, kicked me out of my own house, and spoken to me like I was some helpless elderly woman. All to pay for some fantasy European business trip. But what really destroyed me wasn't the money. It was how callously she had discarded me. 45 years of motherhood, love, and sacrifice, down the drain with a 2-minute phone call. When I went to look at my bank balance, the supposed deposit remained. An insult to generosity. They'd sold the beach house for way less than its value, and Robert's old truck, his baby, for practically nothing. And as I gazed at the screen, I had an epiphany. Angela believed she'd gotten everything from me. But in reality, she'd simply laid the groundwork for her most important lesson ever. I stood at the window that afternoon, watching silently as Angela and Edward stowed their bags into a cab. Edward wrestled with 2 enormous suitcases, while Angela gripped a pricey designer roller bag, no doubt purchased with proceeds from my beach house. They laughed, kissed, and murmured secrets of their sleek, new life in Europe. They resembled 2 unruly teenagers pursuing an escapade. Not a wedded couple who had just deceived a bereaved mother. Not once did they even look toward my window. Not a wave. Not even an adios. As the taxi drove away, an eerie tranquility settled over me. I sat at the kitchen table, Robert's papers in front of me, and sipped tea slowly. I knew I had some decisions to make. Some big ones. I might call the police, press charges, take them to court. But something within me whispered there was a better way, a smarter way. Something that would instruct my daughter what she had forgotten, without a single battle. So I got the phone and rang the number of Mr. Peterson, the attorney who had managed Robert's business. He'd been nice at the funeral, said call him if I ever needed anything. He picked up on the second ring. "Mrs. Brooks, it's good to hear from you. How are you holding up?" "I'm fine, Mr. Peterson," I replied in an even tone. "But I've received some papers from Robert that I need you to review. It's urgent." "Fine. Come by my office tomorrow morning. I'll find time." That night, I slept better than I had in months. I dreamed of Robert sitting in his favorite armchair, reading the morning newspaper. When he looked up and saw me, he smiled kindly and said, "About time, my love. About time you defended yourself." I awoke before the sun rose with those words ringing in my head. It wasn't exactly joy I experienced, but close. A strong, abiding resolve had taken the place of my grief. For the first time in all the time since Robert had died, I had purpose once more. And I knew exactly what I had to do. The following morning, I dressed deliberately. The wine-colored dress Robert had always told me made me look elegant. I styled my hair, added a touch of lipstick, and when I looked in the mirror, I saw her again, the woman I had once been. Not a broken widow, but a tough, competent woman with fire in her heart. Mr. Peterson's office was in downtown, in an old building with marble floors and sunlight pouring through tall windows. He welcomed me warmly, but when I placed the documents on his desk, his smile turned to amazement. "Mrs. Brooks," he said slowly, reading the papers. This is much more thorough than I had ever envisioned. Robert was a very wise man. You are the lawful owner of." "I know," I cut in softly. "I've read them all. What I want to know now is what can be done, within the law." He nodded, pushing his glasses back up his nose. "All of this is legal and proper. You're the owner of all these properties, including the apartment building where your daughter lives. And the sale of the beach house was entirely illegal. Angela had no right to sell it. So I can get it back?" I demanded. "Immediately," he said. "And we can also open a fraud case against your daughter, if that's what you want." I slowly shook my head. "No, Mr. Peterson. I don't want that. Not yet. I want this done quietly. No legal spectacle, no public battle. I want everything returned, but I want my name kept out of it." He looked at me intently, then smiled. "Understood. You have my word, Mrs. Brooks. Discretion first and foremost." "Good," I replied, standing upright. "Begin with the beach house. Reversal of the sale, correct the paperwork, and then assist me to get full control over all of it, particularly the building where Angela resides." He nodded once more. "It'll take a few weeks, but it's purely possible." "Perfect," I replied with a slight smile. When I emerged back onto the hectic downtown street, I felt as though I was awakening from a long, dense dream. Strangers bustled past me, continuing their mundane lives. But mine had transformed utterly. I had a scheme, and for the first time in years, I was alive. The weeks that followed were dreamlike. To the world, I was a poor widow left by her only daughter. But in secret, I was a quiet queen taking back my kingdom. Mr. Peterson worked quietly well, briefing me every few days as my properties quietly returned to me. Meanwhile, I remained in my house, the one Angela believed I had to leave. It was mine and always was. And every night, I'd sit by the window sipping tea, smiling at the thought that my daughter had no idea the game had just begun. Each morning, I woke up at the same time, made a cup of coffee and sat in the same chair where Robert and I had shared decades of love, laughter, and quiet mornings with each other. The chair opposite me was now vacant, but I still poured a second cup, out of habit. After breakfast, I would take a peaceful walk around the neighborhood. The neighbors would nod with their polite smiles, that combination of pity and curiosity reserved for new widows. One day, while watered the plants on the front porch, my neighbor Aurora yelled from behind her gate. "Antonia, dear, is it true? They say Angela's off in Europe and abandoned you here all by yourself." "Yes," I replied with a soothing smile. "She left with Edward. They have some business plans there." Aurora scowled. "Oh honey, and how are you going to be? We all know Robert didn't leave much money." "If only you knew," I thought, trying to suppress a small smile. "Don't worry, Aurora. I'll be fine." "Do you need anything? I can bring you food, help with groceries," she offered. "You're so nice," I said. "But I assure you I'm fine." Aurora sent me that glance I was all too familiar with. The same one strangers sent following Robert's funeral. That odd mixture of sympathy and relief that it wasn't their loss. "Well, if there's anything you need, you know where I am," she said gently. And that was my existence for weeks, a never-ending procession of sympathetic faces. The butcher, the baker, the lady at the corner store, they all addressed me in that gentle, affectionate way they have for the broken and the forgotten. And yet, I didn't resent it. No, a part of me actually liked it. Because the truth was, I was no longer just that lonely widow. I was leading a double life, one quiet and mournful on the outside, but strong and calculated beneath. Then one Wednesday morning, the phone rang. It was Mr. Peterson. "Mrs. Brooks," he said. "I have some good news. The sale of your beach house has been completely invalidated. The buyers didn't know it was bogus, so we gave them back their money. The property is legally yours again." I smiled for the first time that day. "Excellent work, Mr. Peterson. And what about the apartment building where Angela resides?" He hesitated. "That one's slightly trickier. You've always been the owner in a technical sense through the company Robert founded, but we have to make some administrative adjustments so that you have direct ownership. That will take 2 more weeks or so." "Perfect," I replied. "Let me know." Then I hung up and sat with my coffee, gazing out the window. Angela had been in Europe for nearly 3 weeks, and I'd received not a word from her. No call. No message. Not even a postcard. It was as though I had disappeared from her life the moment she obtained what she desired. But I knew that silence would not continue indefinitely. I went to the beach house, my haven, that afternoon. I rode the bus out to the coast, following the same route Robert and I had followed hundreds of times. As I arrived, my heart leapt. The house was as I had remembered it. The cream-colored walls, the tiny porch out to the sea, the soothing hum of the waves. The new owners had set some potted flowers on the steps, but otherwise, it was undisturbed. I parked myself on the curb on the other side of the street for nearly an hour, just gazing at it. Memories came back. Angela barefoot running on the sand, Robert grilling fish while I prepared salad in the kitchen. Laughter, love, ocean smell. All those moments that had once made life so lovely, now whittled down by my daughter to a mere transaction. A gentleman emerged from the house, possibly in his 60s, with gentle eyes. He spotted me sitting there and walked carefully towards me. "Are you okay, ma'am?" he asked. "Yes, thank you. Just remembering," I replied softly. He nodded. "I used to know the family that lived in this house previously. Such a pity what occurred. They explained to us the old lady was seriously ill and needed to sell in a hurry. We believed we were getting a good bargain, but afterwards, we heard that the sale was illegal. We had to give the house back." My gut clenched. "Did you know them well?" "No," he replied. "It was all done through an agent. The daughter explained that she was doing it because her mother could no longer." Such a tragic tale. "If only you knew," I thought. How truly sad it was. "Well," he said with a kindly smile, "I'm glad we didn't lose our investment. Though we're sad to be leaving, we really did like this home." I wished him well and turned away, my heart weighed down. It wasn't only the betrayal that stung, it was how easily Angela had lied. She had lied and said I was sick, unable, helpless. All to excuse stealing what did not belong to her. To her, I was no longer a mother. I was just a hindrance. That evening, I phoned Mr. Peterson once more. "Mr. Peterson," I said firmly. "I also want to retrieve Robert's truck." He hesitated. "That might be harder, Mrs. Brooks. The truck was listed in your name, but your daughter had a power of attorney, which enabled her to sell it." My tone chilled. How could that have happened? "Apparently, you signed that piece of paper a few months after Robert passed away," he said. "Do you recall that?" And suddenly it struck me. Yes, I recalled signing documents Angela had brought, telling me they were for inheritance and funeral procedures. I had been overwhelmed with grief, too lost to read the small letters. I had given her the tool she had used on me. "Understand," I told him softly. "Can we retrieve it?" "We can attempt to do so," replied Mr. Peterson. "But we'll have to prove that you were deceived or forced." "Then let's do it," I said, my voice firm. "I want it all back, every last thing they stole from me." In the weeks that followed, my dual life went on. By day, I was the kindly old widow the neighborhood sympathized with. I smiled, bought groceries, swapped small talk, a portrait of subdued sadness. But beneath that facade, I was something different altogether, a woman restoring her strength, bit by bit. And although no one knew it yet, Angela's universe was soon going to come crashing down, just like the sandcastles she had always constructed along the beach. Every day, I acted out my role of bereaved widow, tranquil, delicate, sympathized with. But when the sun set low and the neighbors drew their curtains, I transformed into someone else altogether. A planner. An entrepreneur. Someone Robert would have been proud to call me. At night, my table was not for tea or quiet time. It was my war room. Robert's old files were open like a treasure map. I read every page, every figure, every concealed account. And soon enough, I discovered something amazing. My deceased husband had been much cleverer than anyone ever did him justice. The apartment building in which Angela resided? Not only lucrative, it was poised on ground that had doubled its value since he acquired it. And Edward. Oh, Edward. I discovered he was in deep financial trouble. He'd put their apartment up as collateral, on a home that technically wasn't even in his name. The banks would be knocking on his door soon. And when they did, the entire house of cards would collapse. One Friday morning, I received a call on my phone. "Mrs. Brooks," said Mr. Peterson, "it's all done. You have complete access to all your assets now. And the truck, we retrieved it. The buyer agreed to return it when I told them the story." I grinned. "Good job, Mr. Peterson. Now I have one final thing that I want you to do." "What would that be, Mrs. Brooks?" "A letter to my daughter. An eviction notice." Silence. "Mrs. Brooks, are you completely sure you want to do this?" "I've never been surer." She determined I wasn't in her life. Now she'll discover just how much control I still possess. That very afternoon, news spread across the neighborhood quicker than smoke on the wind. Aurora, my always inquisitive neighbor, ran over in a hurry. "Antonia, have you heard? Edward is in trouble. The bank's investigating him for unauthorized loans. They say Angela's returning from Europe to clean up the mess. And it seems Edward's so-called business trip wasn't at all real." I took a sip of my tea, hardly managing to conceal my satisfaction. "How unfortunate," I murmured. "Life can be full of surprises." But inside I was beaming. It was all coming together, just the way Robert and I would have wished. That evening, beneath a sky of velvet sprinkled with stars, I breathed softly. "Thank you, my love. You're still guarding me even up there." The following morning, Mr. Peterson phoned once again. "Mrs. Brooks, your daughter just arrived back in the nation. She's by herself. Seems Edward remained in Europe. There are rumors they had a big blowout." "Interesting," I said. "And the letter?" "It's arriving today. She'll receive it within the hour." "Perfect. Let's see how she responds." By nightfall, Aurora came knocking once more, panting, full of new gossip. "Antonia, your daughter's back. I saw her last night. Just one suitcase, she looked terrible. Pale, thin eyes all puffy. And guess what? She didn't even have her keys. Had to beg the superintendent to let her in." I nodded, feigning concern. "Poor thing," I said, stifling a slight smirk. The next morning, my phone jolted at 8 a.m. I didn't have to look to know who it was. "Mom," Angela's voice shook. "I need to speak with you. It's an emergency." "Good morning, dear. How was Europe?" "Mom, please. I received a letter informing me I have 30 days to move out of my apartment. It has to be an error. It's from some firm called, wait, Robert Investments Incorporated. Do you remember them?" "Oh, Robert Investments. My husband's name, his firm, his legacy." The poetry of it almost caused me to laugh. "No. Izwetiye. I've never heard of them. Is it legitimate?" "That's what I'm attempting to discover. Edward left me. He took another woman. And then this occurs. Mom, I don't know what is happening." There it was, the moment of truth. The stand-up daughter who had discarded me, now shattered, deceived and lost. "Honey, oh," I said softly, "I'm sorry. You can come talk to me if you want to." "Mom, please. I don't have anyone else." Naturally she didn't. And now that her universe was imploding, she recalled the mother she had discarded. As I hung up the phone, I strode to the mirror. My calm face looked back at me, unruffled, staid and prepared. I wore my gray dress, pulled my hair back neatly, and smoothened my eyes to resemble a woman who'd endured too much. Angela would see precisely what she wanted to, a frail, forgiving mother. Not the woman who just took everything back. An hour passed, and when there was a knock at the door, I opened it to see her there, broken, gaunt, eyes puffy from tears. Her high-end clothes fell off her like tatters of a life she'd already lost. And in that instant, I almost pitied her. Almost. "Mom," Angela whispered as she came through the door. I held my breath for a moment, thinking maybe she would hug me, that perhaps some portion of her still knew what love was. But she stopped mid-step, her eyes blinking like she'd just recalled the wall that she herself had constructed between us. "Come on in, honey," I murmured. "Would you like a cup of coffee?" She nodded. "Yes, please." We sat across the same kitchen table where I had spent hours studying Robert's papers, strategizing each step that led us to this point. Angela seemed tiny now, delicate, near enough to the little girl who came home in tears after school. "Mom," she started, her voice shaking. "I'm so sorry I left so badly. I know I hurt you." "It's over with, honey," I replied softly. "No, it's not. I said awful things to you. And now," her voice broke, "now I have no one." I breathed slowly. "What did you do with Edward?" Her eyes welled up with tears. "He left me for a waitress named Paris who was 25. There wasn't ever any business trip, Mom. It was all a fabrication. He just wanted to flee his debts, and he spent the money he got from selling your house to do so." I leaned in. "All his debts?" She nodded. "Yes. It turns out he'd been taking out loans for years. He used our apartment as collateral. But now I've found out he wasn't even the owner. How is that possible?" I pretended to think. "Property matters are complicated, dear." "They're after me now," she whispered. "They tell me since we were married, I have to pay for his debts. And then there's this eviction notice. Mom, I don't have money. I don't have a job. I don't have any place to go." She started to cry, actual tears this time. The kind that result from genuine despair. And for a moment, a fleeting moment, my heart melted. I almost went to hug her, until I recalled the icy, cutting voice on the phone that time she said I had to get out of my own home. That memory sufficed. "Did you talk to an attorney about the letter?" I asked. "I cannot afford one," she said softly. "Edward got everything, even what we had left. So what are you going to do now?" I thought perhaps. She paused. "Perhaps I could remain here, just for a little while, until I can get a job." There it was, the question I'd been waiting for. After all she'd done, after tossing me out, selling my belongings, acting as if I were a stranger, now she was asking me to rescue her. "Of course, honey," I said gently. "This is always your home." Her eyes went wide with shock. "Really, Mom? After all I did?" "You're my daughter, Angela. That will never change." She collapsed and hugged me. A frantic, shuddering hug, like a drowning person grabbing for breath. I hugged her back, too, but not from love. Not any longer. Now there was motive in my hug. Calculation. Strategy. "Thank you, Mom," she breathed. "I swear I'll get a job soon. I won't be a burden. Don't fret about that now." I told her kindly. "Rest first. We'll work everything out." When she departed that afternoon to gather her belongings, I sat by myself in the kitchen, smiling weakly. It had worked. She returned exactly as I anticipated, shattered, desperate, oblivious to the facts. She believed she was going home to a refuge. But what she didn't realize was that she had just walked into the next step of my plan. I got on the phone that night. "Mr. Peterson," I said, "I need you to do some investigating." "Of course, Mrs. Brooks. What do you need?" "I want a complete report on Edward's debts. How much he owes to whom, and what I can do legally to distance Angela from his mess." "That'll be some time, but I can do it." "Terrific. And Mr. Peterson." I hesitated. "Nobody can know that I requested this. Top secrecy." "Okay, Mrs. Brooks. May I ask, how exactly do you plan to do this?" I smiled. "Easy, Mr. Peterson. I'm going to rescue my daughter. But first she needs to learn what it really means to lose everything." After I hung up, I filled a glass of Robert's finest wine, the one he used to reserve for special occasions. And tonight had felt extremely special indeed. The following morning, Angela came back, with only 2 suitcases and an old cardboard box. All that she had in the world went into those tiny boxes. I stood and watched her unpack in her old childhood bedroom. The same room where she once fantasized about escaping this house for good. Now she was home, facing the same worn wallpaper, the same sagging bed, and the same ghosts of her past. She stood humiliated, every movement weighed down with defeat. "Mom," she said, holding up a manila envelope. "I found this among Edward's belongings. It has your name on it." My heart skipped a beat. My name, handwritten by Robert. I attempted to remain calm. "That's odd. Perhaps Dad left it for you and Edward never gave it to you," Angela replied. I picked up the envelope and opened it slowly. There was a brief letter, and a small silver key inside. The letter said, "Antonia, if you happen to be reading this after receipt of the main envelope, our daughter is having a tough time. This key unlocks a safety deposit box at the Central Bank, Downtown Branch, number 247. There, you will discover something which can enable you to assist her. Make good use of it. With love forever, Robert." Angela's eyes grew wide as she read what I had been reading over my shoulder. A safety deposit box? Dad had one? I didn't know. I lied. "Your father never said anything to me." She gazed at me hopefully. "Do we go find out what's inside?" I smiled weakly. "I don't know, sweetie. Perhaps it's time that we did." "Perhaps we should just leave it alone," Angela said uncertainly. "But Mom, perhaps there is something crucial in that box. Papers, cash, anything which might assist." Her desperation vibrated through the phone. She was grasping at every shred of hope, and I was letting her cling a little longer, until she had been shown the full picture. "Okay," I answered after a thoughtful pause. "We'll go tomorrow." That evening we dined together for the first time in months. She prepared as if to demonstrate that she could be helpful. The meal was flavored with guilt and apologetic rushes. With each rendition of her European nightmare, the tale darkened. Edward had prevaricated about everything: the business, the investors, the trip. He'd gone off with a 25-year-old Paris waitress. The opportunity was a fabrication. The loans were real. Huge. More than 100,000, Angela hissed. Worse, he had stolen her signature on the loans. "How could he do this?" she asked, stunned. "When I married him, I left the banking documents in his care. I never thought he'd use it for this." My expression remained calm. Inside, I had a cold satisfaction. Edward had run out on her like the coward he was, leaving Angela with the same empty feeling of betrayal I used to experience. In a twisted sort of way, his departure did me a good turn. Now she would experience the humiliation of abandonment for herself. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she wept. "I thought he loved me." "Love can blind us," I replied softly, choosing to keep my voice low. "Don't blame yourself." She kept going, desperate. "I destroyed your life as well. I sold your home, your truck, everything. I was in the wrong." If only she had any idea. Right at that moment, I possessed more than she could even dream. I could fix all of this with one phone call. But that time had not yet arrived. The following morning we visited the bank. I continued playing the role. A dazed widow with minimal financial expertise. Angela was both hopeful and terrified. The clerk escorted us into the vault, examined my identification, and opened safety deposit box 247. Inside were gemstones, heirloom necklaces, rings, bracelets, shining like tiny stubborn suns. Some of them I knew from Robert's family, others were surprises. With them, there was a tidy letter from Robert, with documentation on provenance and an estimate total. Around $200,000. Angela's hand shook as she lifted an emerald-encrusted pearl necklace. "Mom, this must be worth a fortune." "In a way," I told her. "But only part of what we possess." Her immediate reaction, understandably, was to attempt to set everything right with Edward. "We could sell a few of these items," she told me. "You could reclaim the beach house, and I could settle the debts." I saw the familiar pain ignite. Even today, her instinct was to rescue one who had taken advantage of her. She still hadn't learned her lesson. "Consider well," I warned. "If you sell those gems, they're lost for good. Once spent, you can't recover them." "But what else can I do?" she begged. "I can't get a job with these legal judgments, and if I don't pay, the banks will foreclose." She was genuinely panicked. Her choices were limited. But that was all part of the plan. Not cruelty, but tough tutelage. She needed to respond to consequence with responsibility, not band-aids. We departed the bank with the box locked once more, and the jewels securely stored. Angela queried incessantly. I replied only enough to satisfy her. Let her worry boil. Let her confront reality. When the time came, she would realize the difference between being poor by choice and poor by circumstance. The house seemed both home and strange that night. I filled a glass of wine and sat on the porch beneath a sky so crowded with stars Robert would speak of. Watch over us. I spoke into the darkness. Keep teaching me how to be strong. The following would come gradually and tentatively. Inquiries into Edward's debts, legal separations, and a strategy to shield Angela from destruction without bailing out irresponsibility. I had patients, attorneys, and now evidence that I had more than sufficient to provide for both of our futures, if she could learn to stand on her own 2 feet. We returned the jewels to the house. Angela laid them out on the kitchen table. Diamonds, pearls, gold. Once symbols of love and heritage, now quantified down to desperate figures on a spreadsheet. She studied each one, muttering values under her breath, attempting to translate sentiment into survival. Mom, she spoke quietly, counting money later that week. I was able to find a buyer. A bit less than what we expected, around $180,000. But it's enough to settle the most important debts. I gazed at the bills spread out on the same table where her father and I used to map out our future. Do you really need to do this? I asked. I don't have a choice, she sighed. If I don't pay in time, they'll take everything. Even this house may be in danger. I couldn't help but notice the irony. She was afraid to lose a house that was my own, paying the debts of a man who had taken advantage of her, with the jewels of a man who had constructed everything. How will you determine which debts to pay first? I asked. I talked to a bank financial advisor, she answered. She told me to prioritize the debts that involve real collateral first, the ones that might initiate foreclosure. I saw her scribble numbers and scribbles, her brows furrowed in intense concentration. The woman who had once sold my property like there was no tomorrow now studied every step like a professional accountant. Adversity had taken the arrogance away from her and left something raw and intelligent. That evening, as she organized papers at the kitchen table, my phone rang. Mrs. Brooks, replied Mr. Peterson's calm voice. I have a complete rundown on Edward's debts. The news is worse than we expected. Worse how? I inquired. He owes more than $200,000 to a number of banks and some private investors. Worse, some of the loans were made with documents forged with your daughter's signature. That makes her liable. I shut my eyes. Can we ever prove she didn't know? It's possible, he said. But tedious and expensive, at least $50,000 in lawyers' fees. And even that, no promises. What happens if she just pays? If she has the money quickest? But I don't think she can come up with that amount. Mr. Peterson, I whispered. Get everything ready that we need to clear her name, but keep quiet about it. Not yet though. You're going to pay Mrs. Brooks? I'm going to defend my daughter, I replied. But this needs to be done very slowly. When I hung up the phone, Angela remained seated in the living room, gazing at the gems she had not yet sold yet. The light reflected off the emeralds, casting green shadows on her face. She appeared small, like a kid who had broken something valuable and didn't have an idea of how to mend it. What's bothering you, honey? I asked. Dad, she whispered. I keep thinking about how much he'd be disappointed in me. He showed me how to be strong, responsible, to hold family dear, and I did the exact opposite. I left you for a man who lied. I traded our memories for cash. I destroyed all that he worked for. For the first time since she'd returned, her regret didn't ring hollow. Not simply pain over the consequences, but regret for her decisions. People screw up, I said quietly. The thing to do is learn from it. But how do I learn from this, Mom? How do I make things right for what I've done? There it was, the question I had been waiting for. She was ready, finally, to face the truth, to realize the reflection that she had long been avoiding. Not yet though. Not completely. She needed to fall just a little deeper. To know what it really was to lose everything. The following days were important. Angela sold nearly all the jewelry, retaining only 2 items. The engagement ring Robert had once placed on my finger, and a small gold necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. I stood silently by as she scoured jewelers, negotiated prices, and entered stores that had previously greeted her as a client, now as a desperate seller. Each trade-off, each compromise, each defeat, it etched the lesson more firmly in her heart. "Mom, I received $180,000 for the jewels," Angela declared one afternoon, counting out bills on the kitchen table. "It's less than I hoped, but it'll take care of the most pressing obligations." "Are you sure you wish to do this?" I inquired. "I have no choice," she said. "If I don't pay something within a short time, they'll begin foreclosing. Even this building may be in jeopardy if they establish that I have any legal interest in it." The irony of the whole situation struck me like a chilly gust. Angela was so afraid of losing a home that technically belonged to me. She was attempting to repay the mess of a man who had left her, with gems that belonged to the very man who had constructed all she had sold. Life has a cutting way of teaching one lessons. "How will you determine what debts to pay first?" I asked. "I talked with a financial advisor at the bank," she replied. "She said pay loans that are secured by real collateral. Those are the ones that can lead to automatic foreclosure." Within a few weeks, the girl who'd sold my memories so callously had become meticulous and cautious. Pain had rendered her responsible, but pain had also rendered her vulnerable in ways that hurt me to my very core. That evening, as she sorted invoices and statements, Mr. Peterson called. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, his tone low, "we found Edward." "Where?" I asked. "Paris," he answered. Just like Angela was worried. "He's attempting to gain residency through a convenience marriage to that girl. A sham. More significantly, we discovered that he falsified documents in your daughter's name knowingly to leave the country." I felt the world spin in the best direction. "So she can be cleared?" I gasped. "With that evidence, yes. We can prove fraud and coercion. Angela won't be made accountable for his offenses." Excellent. I had a tidy legal route to release my daughter from the debt, without her ever realizing I had the ability to do so. "Proceed as quickly as possible," I instructed Mr. Peterson. "Don't mention my involvement to her. I want this done before she even knows." "This will take 3 weeks," he cautioned. "Are you prepared for that?" "Do it," I told him. I hung up, and Angela looked up from the papers. "Who was that?" "Someone inquiring about Mrs. Davis next door." I fibbed carelessly. The dual existence I maintained was becoming simpler, effortless almost. By day, the sympathize for widow. By night, a woman with influence calmly charting the direction of her daughter's destiny. I watched during the next fortnight as Angela struggled through a new reality. Stretching dollars thin, learning to budget for the first time, going on job interviews despite a destroyed credit record. It hurt, and it was necessary. "Mom, I had 3 interviews today," she said to me one evening, feet puffy and voice weary. 2 told me they cannot employ me because of the outstanding legal suits. The 3rd hired me part-time nights to clean. "Will you take it?" I inquired. "I have to," she replied. "It is not a lot, but it is something. I can work nights and continue looking during the day." Watching the woman who'd once insisted on comfort cleaning floors in the middle of the night was painful to witness, but it also hardened me. She was finally confronting reality without insisting upon someone else taking care of it for her. One evening, as Angela cleaned, Aurora stopped by with sympathetic interest. "Antonia," she asked, sipping tea, "did you think she would return like this?" "She walked away so confident," I said. "Now she's modest. Perhaps she's gaining something valuable." Aurora nodded slowly. "You're doing something very generous. Not every mother would." If only Aurora understood the entire truth, that I already possessed the keys to all of Angela's problems, and yet I was allowing her to learn a little bit more. I had instructed Mr. Peterson to start the legal battle, to establish fraud and exonerate my daughter, but only after she had paid the price, accepted responsibility, and started becoming the person she may one day deserve to be. Aurora regarded me wisely and continued, "I believe you're acting as any good mother would." But I think Angela also needs to get her head around what the real value was of what she gave up by leaving you. I raised an eyebrow inquiringly. What are you talking about? She must see you not only as the mother who saves her every time life falls apart, but as the strong woman who established a stable life entirely by herself for 45 years. She must respect you, not need you. Her words struck me directly in the heart, because that was precisely my intention. I didn't want Angela to come back out of desperation. I wished for her return because she actually knew who I was, and loved me for it. And how can that be? I asked softly. Aurora smiled kindly. I think it's already happening. The way she talks to you now, it's different. She's not that proud, entitled daughter anymore who bossed you around. She's humble now, grateful. She finally sees the mother she has. That evening, when Angela returned home from work, I understood what Aurora meant. She was worn but dignified, carrying the silent pride of one who had worked every dime by hand. Was your first day okay? I inquired. Difficult, she confessed, but not as difficult as I imagined. The other women assisted me. One of them, Mrs. Johnson, taught me how to clean more quickly. Mrs. Johnson? Yeah, she's 60. She's been cleaning offices for 20 years. Her husband left her with 3 little kids, and she started over from scratch. She said this job provided her with independence and dignity. She sounds like a wise woman, I said. Angela nodded. She is. She told me something I'll never forget, that there are 2 types of people who end up doing this job. The people who never had any chance, and the people who messed up the chances they had. And she asked me if I was one of which type. I stared at Angela, intrigued. And what did you say to her? I informed her of the truth, that I had it all, a good mother, a house, an inheritance, and I let it all go by being with a man who didn't deserve me. I was pained in the center of my chest when she said that, a combination of sorrow and pride. What did Mrs. Johnson tell you? I murmured. Laughter came forth and she said, well, at least you know why you're here. That already puts you ahead of most people. Angela smiled weakly, then opened the water and poured a glass full. She sat down across from me and breathed in deeply. Mom, I have something to tell you. I gazed at her softly. What is it, honey? These last few weeks have been the toughest of my life, but also the most valuable. For the first time, I know what it really matters. It's not money, not luxury, not flaunting. It's the people who love you, the people who remain when everything else crumbles. Angela. I started, but she held up her hand to silence me. Please let me get on. You have every right to despise me. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I appropriated everything Dad left behind. I made you miserable, and yet, here I am once more, seeking your pardon. Tears swelled in my eyes. I already forgave you, honey. But I haven't forgiven myself, she answered, voice shaking. And I won't. Not until I demonstrate that I've changed, that I've learned from all of what I've ruined. The following morning, my phone buzzed. It was Mr. Peterson. Mrs. Brooks, he said, eagerness in his tone. We have great news. The case is almost finished. We can get your daughter out of all of Edward's debts. It was finally time. Weeks of observing Angela struggle, think, and evolve. It was time to reveal to her the truth. She was never alone. Mr. Peterson, I said firmly, make an appointment. It's time my daughter knows everything. He set it for Friday morning. I informed Angela only that I had located a lawyer who would be able to assist her with her legal issues. She hesitated. Mom, I don't have money for a lawyer. I just have enough to pay rent and eat. Don't fret, honey. Just listen to what he has to say. Friday morning arrived, and we were there on time. Angela had dressed in her finest, albeit loose now that she had lost so much weight. Her hands shook as she wrung them, anticipating more bad news. Mr. Peterson welcomed us with his customary composed smile. Mrs. Brooks. Miss Brooks. Thank you for coming. Thank you for receiving us, Angela said in a nervous tone. But I must advise you. I likely can't afford your fees. Mr. Peterson threw me a swift glance. That's precisely why we came here. But first, I'd like you to review these papers. He passed her a hefty folder. Angela sat down to read, and as her eyes traveled the pages, her face changed, from confusion to astonishment. I don't get it, she stuttered. These documents state that Edward forged my name, that there is proof of deceit, that I'm not liable for the debts? That's right, said Mr. Peterson. We've collected enough evidence to demonstrate you were a victim of identity theft. You are under no legal obligation. Angela stared up at him in amazement. But how? Who paid for everything? Mr. Peterson addressed me. My time. Angela. I whispered, my heart pounding. There's something you should know. After weeks of deception, the time had arrived to tell it all. I breathed in deep and gazed at my daughter. Angela, I whispered. Your father left me a whole lot more than you ever realized. Angela furrowed her brow, perplexed. What do you mean? Mr. Peterson, I whispered, please show her the other papers. He opened a second folder and pushed it over the desk. In it were the deeds to the property, the bank records, the investment documents, the entire fortune that Robert had quietly amassed before his death. Angela's eyes scanned the pages. Her expression altered, confusion giving way to disbelief, disbelief giving way to shock, and then understanding. Mom, it states you own the building where I used to live. Yes, I said softly. And that you own other properties, bank accounts, investments? Yes. She hesitated, her voice shaking. Then when I sold the beach house, it wasn't my house to sell? No, I said softly. And don't worry. I already recovered it. Angela sat staring at the papers, her hands trembling as the realization hit her. How long have you known this, Mom? Her voice cracked. You knew all of this when I returned from Europe and begged for assistance? Yes. You knew you could make it all right while I was sobbing myself to sleep every single night? Yes. The tension that followed was heavy, bordering on stifling. Angela tentatively closed the folder and stared me dead in the eye. Why, Mom? Why did you let me suffer? When you could have saved me. It was the one I'd waited for. The one I had practiced answering in my head every night. Because, I replied softly, something you had to learn. Something that no one could teach you but life itself. Her whisper was almost silent. What lesson? The value of what you stole, I told her. The value of family, of respect, of responsibility. When you left me, you didn't take cash. You took my dignity, my love, and my trust. Angela's eyes welled up with tears, but these were not the tears of self-pity or guilt I'd witnessed previously. These were tears of true comprehension. I left you when you most needed me, she wept. Yes. I treated you like trash. Yes. And yet you rescued me. Yes, I replied. But not the way you imagine. I didn't rescue you by giving you money. I rescued you by allowing you to fall, so you could learn to stand up again. Mr. Peterson spoke quietly across the room. Your mother paid all the legal fees to release you from the debts of Edward. She's also retrieved all the property that had been sold on fraudulent terms. You're absolutely clear now. Angela dabbed her face. And my cleaning job? You may leave if you wish, I said. But I should not like it. She looked puzzled. Why not? Because that work is teaching you something money never can. The worth of your own effort. The pride of honest labor. The value of every dollar you make. Angela gazed at me with still shining tears in her eyes, but now her face was different. It wasn't the face of a broken daughter anymore. It was the face of a woman who finally got a glimpse of her mother for what she really was. Do you forgive me, Mom? She whispered. I forgave you a long time ago, Angela. The question is, can you forgive yourself? I don't know, she said softly. I've done things that feel unforgivable. We all make mistakes, I said quietly. What matters is what we do once we see them clearly. Mr. Peterson stood up and left us alone in the quiet office. For a few long moments, neither of us said anything. Then Angela turned to me, her voice level. Mom, even if you didn't have all that money, even if you actually were the poor widow I believed you were, I think I would have learned the same thing. I smiled gently. What thing is that? Anything more precious than someone loving you for who you are, she told me. All these weeks, the only reason I got up every morning was that I still had a home with you. That no matter how horribly I'd messed things up, you were still my mom. That never will change, I breathed. Yeah, I do, she replied with a smile through the tears. But now I know I can never take that love for granted again. I have to work it every single day, with respect and gratitude and action, not words. We walked out of Mr. Peterson's office together, not only as mother and daughter, but as two women who had found their way back to one another. The weeks that followed weren't about comfort. They were about rebuilding. Although Angela now knew I had the money to wipe out all her troubles, she refused to give up her cleaning job. One night, while she was buttoning up her work uniform, I asked her gently, "Are you sure about this, honey? You don't have to keep punishing yourself." Angela smiled weakly. "It's not punishment, Mom. It's a reminder of who I used to be and who I want to be now." There was something new about Angela now. In the way she walked, the way she held her head up high, even the way she spoke. She was not the broken, fragile woman who had returned to me in tears anymore. She had discovered something a lot more stronger than comfort, dignity. Aurora came by that afternoon, as she had been visiting every few days ever since Angela had returned. She scanned the room with that keen, inquiring look only an old friend may give. "Antonia," she spoke slowly, "there are some rather peculiar rumors circulating around the neighborhood." I arched an eyebrow. "Rumors? What sort?" She leaned forward. "People are saying that you're not as poor as everyone thought. Someone saw Angela coming out of a fancy lawyer's office downtown. Then she was spotted at the bank, paying off all her debts in full." I smiled faintly. "People talk a lot, Aurora." "Yes, but they're also saying you got your beach house back, and that for some reason, you were able to straighten out all of Angela's legal issues. Antonia, something like that doesn't just happen without resources. Aurora and I had been friends for over 40 years. I could never get anything past her." She folded her arms. "I want the truth. Has my friend been deceiving me all these years?" I let out a sigh and poured her a cup of tea. I sat down across from her. "It's time you knew everything," I said in a soft voice. "Robert left me more than anyone knew, Aurora. Much more." She blinked. "How much more?" "Enough," I said quietly, "that Angela and I will never have to worry about money again." Aurora was silent, taking in the shock. Then she whispered, "And why, Antonia? Why pretend to be poor all this time?" "Because," I added, "Angela had to be taught something she could never have learned otherwise." And then I told her everything. Angela's cruel phone call after Robert's death, the papers I'd discovered, my intention to allow her to deal with the fallout of her decisions. I explained about the sleepless nights, the quiet tears, and the lengthy weeks of seeing my daughter gradually rebuild herself. Aurora sat there in shocked silence. When I'd finished, she slowly shook her head. "Antonia, that's both horrible and wonderful simultaneously." "Horrible?" I asked softly. "Yes," she replied. "Because you allowed your own child to suffer when you could have rescued her. But wonderful, because I get now why you did it." "You do?" "Yes. Angela had to learn the worth of everything she had lost. If you had given her money to fix her problems, she would have only discovered that there's always someone who can save her. You taught her responsibility through reality." "Exactly," I said with a sorrowful smile. Aurora's face softened. "But didn't it hurt, Antonia? Seeing her suffer like that? Each and every day," I confessed. "Each morning I saw her go off to work weary. Each evening I heard her weep in her bed, so I wouldn't notice. But I knew, if I saved her too soon, she'd never really learn." Aurora considered this. "And do you think she really learned the lesson?" I smiled. "See for yourself. She is aware now that she could live well, that the funds are available, but she continues to work. She can leave, but she remains here of her own accord. She can spend lavishly, but she's saving and even assisting others." "Assisting others?" Aurora asked incredulously. "Yes," I replied proudly. "She's been assisting her colleagues, the same women she works alongside at night. One of them couldn't pay for her son's daycare. Angela donated some of her own pay to assist her." Aurora smiled, shaking her head. "That's not the same woman who left to go to Europe." "No. Iraplia quietly. That Angela is gone. The new one knows that money is only a tool, not a goal. She's discovered that dignity is from work, not extravagance. From respect, not pretenses. That evening, when Angela came back home, she caught me reading in the living room. "Mom," she said with a weary smile. "Something amusing happened today." "What?" "Mrs. Johnson, the older woman I work for, asked me if I was the daughter of the wealthy woman who resides on the north side of town." I smiled knowingly. "And what did you say to her?" I said the truth. I told her yes, my mother has so much money that I don't need to work. "And what did she reply to that?" Angela laughed. "She asked me why I was still working. And I explained to her that I wanted to prove to myself that I could do this on my own, that I needed to earn my sense of peace." I grinned. "And what did Mrs. Johnson say?" She laughed and said, "Honey, that's the difference between being rich and pretending to be rich. Your mom taught you how to be really rich." I smiled quietly. Mrs. Johnson was a very wise woman, it seems. "She was," Angela nodded. "And she taught me something significant. It is not how much you have, but what you do with it, and what you become." She sat down next to me on the sofa, speaking calmly and with composure. "Mom, I have made a choice. I want to continue living here with you, but not as your dependent daughter. I want to remain as a grown woman who chooses to share her life with her mother." I frowned slightly. "What's the difference?" "Of course there's a difference," she said, smiling. "Is that I'm going to pay my half of the cost. I'm going to do my part for the house, contribute to everything, not because I must, but because I want to. I don't want to just get love. I want to give it back." "Angela, you don't have to." "Yes, I do, Mom," she replied, softly interrupting. "Because this time, our relationship has to be different. I don't want to be the daughter who takes your love for granted. I want to be the woman who values it and guards it." I gazed at her, truly gazed at her, and saw that she had finally become the woman I had been waiting to see all along. "And your job?" I whispered. "I'm going to continue working," she replied. "Perhaps not cleaning offices for the rest of my life, but something decent, something that keeps me humble. I want to pay for my future, not have it handed to me." I went to bed that evening with a peaceful heart. My scheme, awful as it had been, had succeeded. Angela had lost it all, and in losing it all, she had finally discovered herself. One night, sitting together after supper, Angela seemed contemplative. "Mom," she started quietly, "I've been thinking a great deal about my future. I wish to return to school, to learn something that really counts." I regarded her with interest. "Do you already know what you wish to study?" "Yes," she asserted. "I want to major in social work. What the last few months have taught me is that there are so many people out there who are struggling and don't have someone to guide them or support them. I want to be that person. I want to help women who are going through what I went through." I couldn't speak for a minute. It was perfect. Angela hadn't just learned to appreciate what she had. She had found her mission. Her suffering had been turned into purpose. I beamed with pride. "And Edward?" She sighed, a small smile playing on her lips. "Mr. Peterson informed me that he was arrested in France on charges of marriage fraud. He's being deported within a couple of weeks. But for real, Mom, I don't care anymore. That part of my life is over." "You don't feel any resentment?" I asked. She shook her head. "No. If anything, I'm thankful. Edward's betrayal drove me to rock bottom. And that's where I ended up. Without that crash, I never would have discovered the worth of what I had." That evening, for the first time in months, I slept in total peace. My scheme had succeeded, agonizingly, but flawlessly. Angela had developed into someone stronger, smarter, and infinitely kinder. I could hardly hear Robert's voice calling from the beyond. "You did it, Antonia. You took care of her." 6 months on, our lives had taken on a peaceful rhythm that neither of us could have anticipated before. Angela graduated with straight A's, and I chose to spend some of my inheritance doing something meaningful, setting up a foundation for women who suffered domestic violence and financial abandonment. One morning, Angela burst into the kitchen, her face radiant. "Mom, the university letter arrived." She waved an envelope around, shaking with excitement. I was accepted into the master's program. I begin next semester. I embraced her tightly. That's wonderful news, sweetheart. We'll settle the fees right away. But she put her hand on my arm. No, Mom. I'm paying for it myself, out of my own savings from the city job. Are you sure? I asked softly. We can certainly afford it. I know, she said, smiling. But I must do this alone. That's who I am today. Later that afternoon, Aurora stopped by, just as she did every Friday. She'd become a part of our new little universe, following our tale with pride. As we had tea in the garden, she sighed. Antonia, I must confess something, she said. I thought you were being cruel to Angela, letting her endure when you could have saved her. I smiled knowingly. And what do you think now? Aurora glanced over at the living room window, where Angela sat amidst stacks of books and pages of notes. Now, she said softly, I think you're the wisest mother I've ever met. Look at her, really look at her. That's not the same girl who left for Europe. That's a woman who knows who she is. She was right. Angela had changed from the inside out. Her confidence didn't come from designer clothes or luxury anymore. It came from something far deeper, self-respect. Aurora laughed. I ran into her in the grocery store yesterday, purchasing vegetables for a family she's serving through her work. And when I questioned why she was spending her own money rather than the foundation's, she said, some things can't be measured in budgets. I smiled. That was my daughter. That night, Angela and I had dinner on the porch, something that had become our little tradition. As the sky went gold, she talked softly. Mom, I received a weird letter today. My belly clenched. From who? Edward, she replied levelly. I went rigid. Edward? In prison? She nodded. Yes. He's in France, doing 2 years for fraud. He wrote to apologize, to tell me he regrets everything and hopes I forgive him. And how do you feel about that? I asked cautiously. She stared out at the horizon. Honestly, I don't feel anything. No cat. No sadness. Just nothing. That part of my life is gone. Are you going to write back? She smiled faintly. No. Not because I'm angry, but because there's nothing left to say. The woman he married doesn't exist anymore. This Angela has nothing to do with him. I watched her silently, suffocated by the strength of her words. This was not the same broken girl who had once pleaded for love. This was a woman tempered by heartache and remade with strength. Do you know what I've learned from all of this, Mom? She asked. I shook my head. What, sweetheart? That real love isn't the kind that says what you want to hear. It's the kind that shows you what you need to know. Even when it hurts. She regarded me, her eyes aglow. Edward said what I wanted him to say. You said what I had to know. You showed me that real wealth has nothing to do with comfort or luxury. It has everything to do with self-worth, respect, and love earned. That evening, after Angela retired to her bedroom to study, I sat on the porch by myself. The stars twinkled over the peaceful house, and I remembered Robert. I vowed to you I'd take care of her, I said softly. And I did. Not by providing for her, but by showing her how to construct her own life. I hadn't rescued her by fixing everything for her. I had rescued her by allowing her to discover the strength to fix things herself. The following morning, Sunday, we finally went to the old beach house. Angela had been avoiding it for months, telling me she wasn't ready to confront those memories. As we drove down the familiar road, she sat quietly looking out the window. When we got there, she climbed out of the truck and gazed at the house for a long time. It looks just the same, she said quietly. Yes, I smiled. Some things never change. She breathed deeply. But I have. I'm not the same person who sold this house once. We approached the door together, mother and daughter, side by side. Different women than before, yet stronger, wiser, and finally free. The house was just as Robert and I'd left it, spotless, warm, and full of memories. Angela walked in slowly, scanning every room, every photo on the walls, every remnant of the life we'd once shared together. She trailed her fingers across the old piano, lingered beside the family portraits, and whispered, Mom, I have to apologize. I turned to her softly. You have already, sweetheart. No, she answered resolutely. Not for everything. For this house. I remained silent as she went on, her voice shaking. I apologize for selling it, not only because it was ill-advised, but because I turned all our family history into a commodity. This house is not merely bricks and timber, it's our history. 40 years of love, laughter, summers, birthdays, and Christmas mornings. Dad constructed that porch himself. You tilled that garden. I learned how to swim at that beach. And I threw it all away, for a man who never loved me. She collapsed onto the sofa where Robert had read on Sunday mornings. Do you know what hurts me most, Mom? She said softly. What, darling? Because when I sold this house, I didn't care. It was just a house. But now, being here again, I can feel Dad in every nook. I can smell his morning coffee. I can hear his laugh. I can almost see his glasses still on that table. I smiled gently, tear-brimming eyes blinking away. He's here, Angela. Always has been. She nodded slowly. And I know he's proud of you, Mom. Proud of how you carried on. We spent the whole day together, cooking, cleaning, mending little things in the house. It was like a healing ritual. A ritual of remembering who we were. And where we belonged. As the sun set below the horizon line, we sat on the porch Robert had constructed with his own 2 hands. As the golden light dissipated into the sea. Mom, Angela said abruptly. I have an idea, a proposal. I gazed at her, intrigued. What is it? I want to make this house a temporary refuge for women fleeing domestic violence. A place where they can live while they rebuild their lives. A sanctuary, as it was for me. My heart overflowed with emotion. It was ideal. Robert would have adored that vision. That his house, what was once a family's heart, would now serve as shelter for others. I grinned. That's a wonderful thought, darling. We can utilize some of the foundation money to keep it going, and you can run the program with your work. Angela regarded me anxiously. Are you certain you want to open up our family home like that, Mom? I grasped her hand. The greatest refuges are shared ones. Your dad always used to say that a house isn't home until it welcomes in those who need love. She smiled, crying. He was right. He always was. We came home that evening with a new sense of purpose, not as mother and daughter held together by duty, but as 2 women who had decided to create something special together. Our connection wasn't constructed on need anymore. It was constructed on love, respect, and a common dream. Looking up at the ceiling before drifting off to sleep that evening, I spoke into the emptiness. We did it, my love. Our daughter finally knows what really counts. And for the first time since his passing, I could feel Robert's presence, warm, comforting, and proud. I always knew you would, he appeared to say. You're both braver than you think. Justice had finally been served, not by revenge, but by redemption. Not by punishment, but change. In the end, we had won something far greater than riches. We had discovered peace, meaning, and an inviolable connection that no suffering could ever break. Did you enjoy this story? Where are you listening from? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear. If this story made a difference in your heart, please consider supporting the channel with a super thanks. Your generosity enables me to continue sharing more stories from the heart like this one each week. Don't leave yet. There are 2 new life stories waiting for you on the screen. Trust me, you won't want to miss them. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. Until next time, with love, respect, and gratitude.